Cambridge University had a little bit of a victory for free speech earlier this week. Hasn't been quite so much coverage, obviously in the middle of Brexit and all the dealings with COVIDs and vaccines and all of that coming out. But I wonder whether this is a significant moment and a turning of the tide when it comes to our right to keep freedom of speech. Well, let's discuss that with my next guest, author and Spectator columnist Douglas Murray. Good morning to you, Douglas.
Good morning. Very good to be with you.
Very good to speak to you today. If you could just first of all, you could just explain what actually happened at Cambridge University earlier this week.
Yes, that's right. The Vice-Chancellor of Cambridge University probably wins the prize as the most woke Vice-Chancellor in Britain.
That's quite something.
It's quite some stiff competition for that title. And he and others at Cambridge wanted to enforce a new speech code that ensured that everybody at the university had to respect the opinions of others. And a number of very smart academics pointed out that there's no particular reason why you have to respect other people's opinions. For instance, a scientist or anyone else shouldn't necessarily have to respect the opinions of a flat earther. And so there's something very clearly and subtly wrong. And you and I know that the whole thing about respecting opinions is very often just a one-way street. It actually means just agree with what you're told to agree with and otherwise shut up. And so these academics suggested actually respect was completely the wrong way of looking at this. And actually people should be encouraged, yes, to be tolerant of other people. But they didn't have to respect any other opinion. And actually this amendment won by a landslide. Cambridge academics came out to say, yes, the new free speech dogma that the Vice-Chancellor was trying to impose on them was not the correct one. And they rebelled. So it's a small, but I think significant step.
Well, that's it. A lot of people listening to this will say, honestly, what are you two on about? This is semantics. Who cares? But we do have a very big issue generally in the media, in politics, I think in many people's ordinary workplaces, not just in the dreaming spires of Cambridge or other top universities, where people feel that they cannot speak out. They cannot give honestly held, perfectly reasonable opinions, often held by 90% of the population plus, whether it's trans issues, Black Lives Matter or anything else. They can't give those opinions because someone will say, I'm offended by that. You are therefore a bad person and you should lose your job. The cancel culture we hear so much about is very, very real.
Yes, that's right. Well, I said in a recent piece in the Telegraph that everything to do with free speech laws, like the Equality Act and all of this sort of stuff, they're like badly drawn borders in the Balkans. Draw the border badly or lazily or incorrectly, and you will leave a massive hostage to fortune years down the road. We've got that at the moment with the Equalities Act, which frankly isn't fit for purpose. It leaves decent, respectable mainstream opinion behind enemy lines. It's the same with this. This is what the academics at Cambridge realized. They intuited this. This was going to be a badly drawn border, and they tried to draw it more correctly. So, yes, it can seem like it's a semantic thing until it turns out that you're one of the people stuck on the terrain that's been left behind.
And that's it. And that's where we get to the territory of the likes of J.K. Rowling, who I think is generally an all-round good egg. She and I don't agree on lots of issues regarding things like Remain or party politics, but love her books, love her right to free speech, completely agree with her on the trans issue. But even if I didn't agree with her views on trans issues versus the rights of women and safety of women in women-only spaces, I would still defend her right to speak out without being given the most extraordinarily, just foul abuse and threats that she has faced. She was too big to be cancelled. She earns too much money for too many publishers and film companies and the like. However, we are seeing across the board, not just in universities, not just in celebrity life, we are seeing people in ordinary jobs routinely now losing their jobs, contracts suspended, people basically being frozen out and seeing their careers ended because they have given an opinion which often is regarded, certainly would have been regarded even 2 years ago as a mainstream opinion on, say, something like trans issues or how you tackle racism, these sort of things, and being, frankly, basically, to all intents and purposes, thrown out of polite society. Do you think that this decision at Cambridge University, the fact that it was not just defeated, this plan, but that it was so roundly defeated, that this shows that actually the silent majority, they may not be, beating their hearts on Twitter constantly. They may not be the first to sort of demand people are cancelled and sacked and the like, but actually there are more of us than there are of the people who are trying to censor us.
Oh, I completely agree with that. I mean, we see it all the time. We've seen a lot of it this year. The BLM backlash was a good example of it. In the early days and weeks, you couldn't say anything negative about BLM. People actually lost their jobs for doing so. I'm on the board of something called the Free Speech Union, which I always encourage people to join. And we helped various people lawyer up after being fired for pointing out that Black Lives Matter is an avowedly Marxist organization, which is what it says it is. Now we get to this weird bit at the end of the year where some people trying to hold on to this BLM religion, like the trans religion and others, they're trying to hold on to it in the face of all odds. And now we see the ultimate excess of that, which is clubs being told basically to sack their fans.
That's basically it. It's a fair summary. Yeah.
Very overpaid footballers are told they've got to fire their fans who pay their salaries. Great arrangement.
I was on Question Time last night, and I tweeted out afterwards before it went out. Dear, I said, suffice to say, the only Brexiteer on the panel, the only one who thinks that footballers shouldn't take a knee, and thinks that we shouldn't have such severe COVID restrictions. But it was interesting discussing the Black Lives Matter issue. Could instantly feel everybody sort of tense up and be anxious when I said, well, no, I don't think footballers should be taking the knee. I mean, the polling shows that's like a half opinion. My guess is, if people being more honest, most people don't want it to happen. I'm not saying I would boo someone doing it. I definitely don't approve of it. I wouldn't want it to happen. But again, this instant idea that if you don't accept that as a demonstration, the taking of a knee or the like, you must be a racist. We have this incredibly, for want of a better phrase, black and white view of these things right now.
Yeah, this is why I said that it's so important that these lines are drawn properly, and why, as I mentioned at the beginning, this thing of respect is such a crock, because we all know that respect is a one-way street. We see this in the stadiums. If the players have the right to parade their moral alleged virtue by taking the knee 7 or 8 months after a Minnesota cop was responsible, it seems, for the death of a man in Minnesota, if they're able to do that, then the crowd's allowed to boo. Yeah, that's the deal.
It works
kneel,
both ways.
They can boo.
Can I also ask you another story that's actually on the front page of most newspapers today, which is extraordinary, actually, given how many other things are happening. But the news that Kay Burley, the Sky News presenter, and Beth Rigby, their political editor, and others who attended Kay Burley's 60th birthday celebration dinner last Saturday, that they have been suspended. Kay Burley for 6 months, Beth Rigby for 3 months from air, as a result of breaking those rules. What do you make of, I suppose, first of all, their decision to break the rules, and then the decision of Sky News to suspend them?
Well, it's a very interesting one, isn't it? Because really what this is something we've seen a lot of in America, which is the backlash against the say do as I say, not as I do. The governor of California told everyone in California that they should put their masks on in between bites of their meal. And he was discovered having a $400 a plate restaurant meal at a French bistro with 30 other people, including lobbyists. So this is a very sensitive thing, this. And the problem that Sky has had, the problem specifically that Kay Burley and Beth Rigby have had, is that it isn't what they do in their private time. It's the fact that, you remember Beth Rigby in the Garden of Downing Street competing with all of the other hacks to say that Dominic Cummings had broken the rules. And why do you think you're special and all this? This wasn't just journalistic questioning. Beth Rigby was doing this thing of auditioning to be the sort of witchfinder general. I'm more holy than thou. And the problem with that is you've got to be really holy for a sustained amount of time. And it turns out that they weren't. Who could have guessed? Yeah,
hypocrisy is something that I know we Brits aren't very keen on. It does seem, I have to say, it's a pretty stiff penalty, although there's still a debate about whether they're on full pay or not. I mean, a lot of people thinking, full pay 6 months, not such a bad thing for not doing anything, but there we are. Douglas Murray, always a pleasure to speak to you. Lovely to end my show this week, indeed, with you. He is, of course, a Spectator columnist and writer, author of the utterly brilliant Madness of Crowds as well. Thank you so much for joining us.